Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. This is my 10,000 subscriber Q&A special. So just recently I hit 10,000 subs, which was pretty cool and totally unexpected. And I threw out a question, hey, what would you guys like to see for this video? And the overwhelming response was for some Q&A. So I put a post up on Instagram and said, give me your questions. And I got a lot of questions. So that was kind of hard to get through. So I did my best to pick out a random sampling of them and eliminate some of the ones that were duplicated or some of the ones that I'm just not well equipped to answer. A few of you asked for things like differences between cognitive types and things like that. And there are channels that are much better for that kind of information than I would be. But I do want to give you my insight on some of the ones that came through and hopefully just have a really fun conversation with you guys about this. And so before I begin, I am currently a co-host of a podcast. And this is with an amazing company, two awesome guys, Eric and Kyle, in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. The company's called Budo Brothers, and they're launching this podcast, and it has to do with your mindset and being positive and having gratitude, just all the really good things that I talk about pretty much all the time anyway. I am a big part of this podcast. It's the three of us just having a really nice open conversation, and I'll leave links and things to it wherever, and please check it out and give it a download and subscribe to it. It's released every week, and if you're not tired of me yammering at you all the time on this channel, I can yammer at you more, like while you're driving or something. I don't know. Anyway, so let's do an intro, and then we're going to get to the questions, and here we go. Okay, so I have about 30 to 40 questions, and I'm going to try to get through these as quickly as I can, so this video is not 2 hours long. I talk, people. I'm kind of verbose when I'm answering things, especially when I'm doing it a little bit off the cuff like this, so I'm going to try to limit the editing as best I can, but sometimes it happens. First question that I have here is, do you have any advice on how to be less sensitive or how to be less affected by the opinions and criticism of other people? I've got plenty of advice about that, and I'm really bad at it myself. So take it with a grain of salt, please. I think the main thing is understanding where that criticism is coming from. If it's coming from a place of somebody wanting to try to improve you, then it's something that you need to listen to and try to ignore the delivery method of that criticism if it comes off as a little bit brash or harsh, and understand what the underlying motivation is. By contrast, if it's coming from somebody that's just a jerk, well, then you got to let that one, water off a duck's back, so to speak. You have to let that one go because it's not coming from a place of wanting to help you. And keep that in mind too when you're criticizing others. If you have to critique somebody, and in the writing world we do this a lot because a lot of writers, we read each other's stories or words, and we have to give some feedback. And it's important to give that feedback in a productive way that's gentle, but like, this is what I'm thinking. And when I read what you're writing, it doesn't do anybody any good to be like, hey, that just straight up sucks. Nobody wants to hear that. You know what I mean? Good question, though. Next one, Sarah. I seem to always be more the listener than the talker in conversations. Why does that happen as an INFJ? Do we have a natural magnet of some kind? I, too, am often the listener and not the talker in conversations. And I think that is a pretty common thing for INFJs, to be honest. I think we like to put together puzzle pieces in our head, and it's just kind of like a subconscious urge. It's our intuition going crazy, right? And we have that extroverted feeling, and so we want to dig in and know how somebody is feeling and what's going on in their heads, and so we'll almost be interviewing them to a degree. And I think in a lot of cases, I certainly am very much like that. I try to ask as many questions as I can. And also, to me, that shows that you care about that person. And I think that's really important. It stands out to me when I have a conversation with somebody and all they do is talk about themselves. That can be difficult, and it makes me less inclined to have a conversation with that person again, because it's a one-way engagement, and that's not really how a conversation or how a friendship should work. Again, really good question. Next one. How do you feel about school reunions? I've got one coming up. Don't go. That's exactly how I feel about school reunions. I went to one of mine, and honestly, everybody just kind of got wider and more annoying. So I'm just being straight up honest with you here. So yeah, I'm personally not a big fan. I mean, it depends if you've got the close friends there, maybe hang out. Just be careful. The whole coronavirus thing's going on. So, get-togethers and whatnot. Next question. This was a long one. I'm going to boil it down because I already read this before. Sarah asked, I'd like to write a self-help book. I'm skipping to the last part of this one. Which is based on my personal life experiences, but dressed up in a fantasy fairy tale. Do you have any tips for distilling down my ideas, creating structure, and monitoring my tendency to overshare? What? An oversharing INFJ? I've never heard of such a thing. So for this, I go through the same thing with the stories that I write. And my characters are, to a large degree, me. Because that's my frame of reference for a main character, is my own personal experiences and what I've been through. And so I would say it's not oversharing if you give that character some of your traits wrapped up in their world and kind of show it that way with maybe little alterations. All of the things that, almost everything that I've ever been through is in one or the other of my main characters that I'm currently writing. And it's because I can feel that experience so strongly, and I can draw on it just with a really strong memory. And so I would say you're not really oversharing if your character's oversharing, right? Next one. Lisa asks, I'm an INFJ writer too. Woohoo! And at the moment, I'm struggling to overcome my caving tendencies in a world that seems so social media centric. Yes, it does. So how do you balance your desire or need for solitude with the constant need to promote yourself online? I'm struggling with that. I struggle with that too. I don't consider doing these videos promoting myself online because I'm doing this with a different kind of purpose. I'm not doing this to sit here and sell you anything. If you haven't been able to notice, I don't have ads on my channel. I'm just trying to come across in an authentic way as best I can and help some people and talk about my own experiences. And it holds me accountable to do it. It keeps me out of trouble because this is a nice project. And it keeps me engaging with people and thinking about other things and getting ideas for all the stuff that I do. And so I think when you have a presence like that, it's way better than hopping onto Twitter, grabbing a Twitter account and trying to just sell everything you have to everybody on there. That is a very disingenuous way to run your own social media stuff. So I'd say try not to be afraid to share a little bit and resonate a little bit with people, because I think that makes a very big difference. When people see that you are just you, then you're cool and we want to hang out. You know what I mean? Next one. Sophie asks, how is the process of writing a book and when can we expect its release? Congrats, by the way. Book is a huge achievement and I can't wait until it's out. I can't either. And if somebody could just write the rest of it for me and be like, hey, here, it's done, that'd be great. But that's not how it works. The process is a long one. Not gonna lie, it's been about a year working on this so far, and that is a very long-term project. And usually, I have a hard time keeping something going like that. That's a very long view of things. But I know how I work creatively, and I think that's very important. I know that I'm not the type to write every day. And that when I do write and I do feel that inspiration, I know to kind of drop everything and get the words down. And I think knowing how you work is really important as far as the process goes. Right now, I mean, for technically like how the process is, I'm trying to, I map out the story, loosely map out the story, and just try to get the words down, because you can't edit what you don't have down on a page. And that is kind of important to actually, write the book. After all that, it's going to be rounds of editing and polishing and cleaning it up and running it through a couple people that are beta reading for me, just to make sure the story is nice and tight and really good. And then I have to decide on how I'm going to publish this thing. And that's an entirely different can of whatevers. I don't know. Worms? It's just so overdone. Can of marmosets? I don't know. Next one. My friend Jacqueline asks, I want to know what inspires you most. Whew. All right. So this is a big question. I'm inspired by a lot of things. I'd say what inspires me most is a sense of connectedness, and it's connections. Connections to people, connections to places, connections to things, to feelings, to emotions. I am always floored with how you can hear a song, and that song hits you in such a straight, hard way that it's you just know the feeling of it. It does something different to you than anything else. I think the same stands for people, and you can meet somebody and feel connected to that person, and you just know, like, you click, like, that's my person. And I think appreciating those connections and hanging on to them no matter what is the most important thing. And that inspires me. I seek out those connections. I want to feel that way about people and things and art and culture and just everything that's around in this world. I look for those things that resonate so deeply with me, because that's the stuff that fills my heart. And that's the stuff that lets me get inspiration for all the other things that I'm doing, as an artist or as a creative. So I would say connections. Connections inspire me more than anything else. That's a very good question. Next one is, hi, I'm a Jamaican INFJ. So cool, right? The thing is, sometimes my introverted intuition is inaccurate. I know you can relate to this on some level. Boy, howdy. However, because it is on point most of the time, this influences me to rely on it more than I should. How do I fight or resolve this? All right, so I don't know if intuition is ever really wrong. And much like putting together a puzzle, right? Your intuition is out there grabbing all sorts of pieces of information on a subconscious level, and it's starting to put puzzle pieces together. And sometimes that puzzle doesn't look like what you think it does, because not all the pieces are there. So you may look at it and surmise that, like, okay, this is a picture of, a frog, when the puzzle is actually put together, it's not a frog, it's a tree, or something along those lines. Getting really abstract. But my point is, your intuition is collecting information, and I think it is your own feeling and your own logical thinking that is impressing upon that something that maybe isn't actually real. And so in terms of like a relationship, this is the trick where your intuition is saying, something's a little weird or something might be slightly off, but you want so badly to be with that person that you ignore those red flags and you see that puzzle for what you think it is, and that's not actually what the picture is. So I think it has to do with being patient, and I think being patient will help you resolve it. And I think really trying to step back and look at things logically will help you resolve it as well. That's a great question. Next one. How do you as an INFJ know which of your feelings are yours and which are someone else's that you have absorbed? I don't. I never realized I was doing this until recently, and now I realize that I've often tried to act on or justify emotions that were not mine to begin with. It does kind of make sense to be angry with someone that is angry at you. Yes, that is very true. No wonder I've been so confused about my emotions. So internal feeling for an INFJ is pretty far down on the totem pole, right? I mean, we all have it. We all know that we feel certain ways about things, but it seems like for INFJs, it's a very difficult thing to square. We're really good at reading a room and reading the emotions of others, and we tend to absorb a lot of those feelings, and then it's hard to sit back and distance ourselves and say, well, this is what I think, and this is what I'm feeling about this. And one of the ways I like to do that personally is to try and objectively step back and look at myself as if I'm in a movie, and this movie is my life. It doesn't have all good parts. So when I look at it that way and I say, okay, this person, referring to myself in this situation, what would they be feeling? And so it's almost a way to flip around how I feel, my external feeling, which is really strong, with my internal feeling, which is not very great. And to say, okay, if I'm looking at this from a very objective standpoint and I have to take care of myself, how would I react in this situation? It's the best answer I can give to a really good and kind of complicated question. But you have to step back and you have to be able to think a little bit logically. I think that's the main takeaway. Next one, Steffi is asking, here are some writing questions. Ooh, writing questions. Okay, here we go. 1, what motivates you to write and why do you do it? I like to tell stories. I think it's fun. I think I can take this world that I see in my head that is just really fleshed out and put it on paper and make it real and hand it to somebody and they think it's cool. And to me, that's just really fun. And I think when you have a story to tell, that's just part of the magic of it all. Second one, do you need to be in a specific mood or mindset to write, or do you have a daily writing schedule? I do not have a daily writing schedule. My schedule is kind of nuts. I'm working, I've got kids, I've got projects going on. There's podcasting now. There's this YouTube video. I'm trying to finish a book. So there is a ton of stuff going on, and I tried to be that writer that sat down in the morning and was like, okay, 1,000 words today and 1,000 words tomorrow and 1,000 words a day after, and so on and so forth. I am not that writer, and I've totally accepted that. I write when the whim strikes, and I try to get it in at least once a week. And I may sit down and put down 500 words. I may sit down and write 5,000 words. I've done both. And some days they're just flowing, some days they're not. And if they're not, I try not to fight it. I'll do a little bit of editing. I make some kind of progress. I try to think through the story a little bit more, think about things that I could do. And I think it's just all a matter of understanding how you work creatively. Third one, which book has impacted you greatly and maybe even shaped your ideas and writing style? Wow. Okay, so there's a few. I love the writings of H.P. Lovecraft, and I love the mood that H.P. Lovecraft is able to create in a lot of his stories. Yes, true. In just about every single story he has, the protagonist of his story goes mad and probably dies. But boy, the mood's really cool. So I like him. I like the way he writes. I like the way he describes scenes. I like the darkness of it, this kind of just dripping sort of, I don't know, malaise about it all is just really kind of cool to me. And so that's something that I definitely try to explore in my own writing. I love Edgar Allan Poe, and Poe's been one of my favorites for forever. And not just because he's super depressing and everything is terrible, but I love the way he crafts words and is so skillful with it. And I love reading his stuff. Everything about his stories really, really hit me in a very special way. And so those writings, more than anything, shape a lot of how I write. I am not Edgar Allan Poe. I am not H.P. Lovecraft, but I take a lot of inspiration from those two in particular. 4, do you think INFJs make good writers? And what are our strengths when it comes to writing? I think we have very vivid internal worlds. And so I think that can come out in a really great way as an INFJ writer. And I also think that we tend to like things a certain way. And a little bit of our perfectionisting helps when you're writing and crafting a story, because you try to really hone in on some of those details, and that makes it feel much more real. Last one, if you could choose only one thing, what essential advice would you give an aspiring writer? Oh, I love that question. Stop referring to yourself as aspiring. If you're writing a story, if you have a story in your head and you're putting words to a page, you are a writer. You're not aspiring. That's exactly what you're doing. Now, you may not be a published author yet, but you're a writer, and you should absolutely call yourself a writer. And when you introduce yourself to people, if they ask what you're doing, you say, I'm a writer. And I think it's important to do that and embrace it, and to stop thinking that your art is somehow less because you haven't finished something. It doesn't matter. You could be writing some of the greatest stuff ever, and it just hasn't been seen by anybody else yet. And so take the time certainly to work on your craft, but definitely embrace the fact that you are a writer and you are an artist, and be happy with that. I think that's really important. Next one. Just subbed. Thank you. Your content is a haven for me. Me too. How do you cope with personal disappointment as an INFJ, since we're prone to guilt shame and have unrealistic ideals of ourselves? Well, you just feeling a little attacked right now. You laid a lot on that one. So coping with personal disappointment as an INFJ because of unrealistic ideals or expectations or what have you. Well, I try to set a low bar, and I try to forgive anything that's outside of my control. And I think it's important to understand that. If you think of one side of a room being all the things you can control and one side of a room being all the things you can't control, you hang out with what you can control. And The other things, you just have to kind of take it as it comes. And there may be unexpected things that happen to you on a day-by-day basis. That's perfectly normal. It's part of life. And so I think part of this, coping with disappointment, with personal disappointment, is forgiving yourself in a way for not handling a situation perfectly, understanding what's in your control, learning from it, and trying to do better the next time. And I think if we can be a little self-deprecating and laugh at ourselves and how ungraceful we may be from time to time, I think that's really important. Good question. Short Stack of Pancakes. This is my friend Bailey, by the way. Asks, I'm representing the INT community here. Hello, fellow INTPs. How do you as an INFJ deal with anxiety? Not very well. I don't know. I break down and I get in my bunny blanket of depression and I make tea and I eat chocolate and that's pretty much it. No, anxiety is like, it's one of those things a lot of times for me, when I feel it coming on, it's too late and it's already hit and I'm already in the grips of it. And I don't know how to pull myself out of that. And so that is really, really difficult. I think, again, trying to maintain control of the things I can control is very important for me to try and stay grounded. When I start thinking about the situations that are outside of my control, that's when I start to spin into a really bad loop, because I'm trying to look at all the possibilities of what could happen from something that I can't control and is a totally random circumstance anyway. So what good does that do my brain other than make it overthink? Which is something I'm really, really good at. So yeah, I think handling what you can control and trying to let go of all of the worry and possibilities on the other stuff is probably the most important thing. By the way, hi, Bailey. Next one. Do you think as INFJs we are starved for affection? Oh, I love being alone, but sometimes I would love that comfort and understanding of another human being. That's big, feeling that comfort and understanding from another person that's huge. It brings you peace and it makes you feel good. And it lets all of the BS of your daily life just kind of wash away. Now, starved for affection, I don't know that I agree with that term. I think as INFJs, we are starved for balance. And we're not very good at creating that ourselves. And so I would say, instead of saying starved for affection, starved for balance, I love being alone, but I need other people. And balancing that is what's most important. I can't just say I'm starved for affection. I need to be around somebody that 24/7 is showering me with affection, because that is going to drive me crazy just as much as not having any at all. And so the interactions are important, but understand that your brain needs alone time too. And you need time to process things and you need time to square away your own feelings. And all of that is very, very important. It's a very thought-provoking question. Dan asks, how does an unhealthy INFJ reconnect to NI, introverted intuition? What activities can one do to stimulate, develop NI? Okay, so there's no such thing as it's not like a crossword puzzle, right? You can work on your vocabulary by playing like Scrabble and bananagrams and crossword puzzles. There's nothing like that for NI. Remember that it's subconscious. So as soon as you're thinking about it, it's not your NI anymore. That's your thought, right? That's your thought process. That's your internal thinking that's going on. And so your intuition, I think, is just there all the time. What I think maybe the reconnecting is just listening to it. And trying to determine when you are accurately listening to it or not. When you get that sinking feeling that something is wrong and something is off and you're unsettled, it's trying to dig down and find the reason for it more than anything else. Okay, so this one is, this is my friend James, Jambo Rafiki. I am in my early 20s. Most of my friends often have these great ideas of how they can do business that will bring great wealth. Personally, I've never thought about this. All I'm interested in is helping people in the field I'm in. Just wondering, is that like an INFJ thing or is it just a me thing? I think it's a little bit of both. I think as INFJs, we like things that are somewhat idealistic, and we do want to fix people. And a lot of us want to just heal the world, and it's how it goes. I want everybody to be happy. You can't really do that. So for me, squaring this, I just give you a personal story, right? I ran a martial arts dojo for many years, and it was important that my dojo was not just teaching kids how to kick and punch stuff and having birthday parties where you cut swords with samurai, where you cut cakes with samurai swords and stuff like that. For me, it was really important to give those kids lessons as far as personal achievement and responsibility and being respectful. And that was my way of sending them out after I had my time with them into the world as a more grounded and respectful individual and somebody that would stand for the things that are right and would be nice to mom and dad. And I felt that I could square away this being a business and try to have it grow and try to make some money from it. But in the same time, I'm really giving back, and I'm doing it with this purpose to reach reach people that needed to be reached and really help them. And this was my way of making the world better. I thought that if I could take one kid who's being bullied at school and they come to classes, I will make my best effort to make sure that they are feeling safe and confident and awesome in that class. So when they go back to school and they see somebody else being bullied, they're the one that stands up. And that was my little way of trying to change the world. And I don't know, that kind of idealistic thinking. So I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. But I do think that as an INFJ, you do well in a job that's fulfilling and that's not just the same thing over and over and over again. And I have no doubt that you are going to do very, very well, my friend. Next one. Why is it so hard for an INFJ to do the first move? Okay, so I was afraid I'd get a question like this. Fear of emotional rejection, I think, more than anything else. I think it's hard for an INFJ to make the first move because we do feel things so strongly that if we would try to make a move, and I am not like the suave guy you should be asking this question to, that it hits us particularly hard knowing that we may have made somebody feel uncomfortable, or that it is unrequited, or that you're just going to get shot down. Those things tend to wreck you and put you in a spiral for a long time. And so I think, we're the type not necessarily to make the first move, but to just ask permission to be near people. I think that's how we do things. Next one, Marla Jane. How can an INFJ focus their TI on researching the specific details of stuff properly without knife wandering in to make huge extrapolations? So, how do you focus your research for writing efforts as an INFJ? Ooh, I am famous for going down rabbit holes. I will look at a topic that I'm very interested in, and the next thing I know, I have dug down, and I'm learning that there's something called a phantom octopus that lives, in a pressurized environment under the sea where it's 700 degrees and the water is made out of acid. And they do exist. You should look them up because they're really cool. And so it's hard for me as well, just focusing my efforts. I think I try to pinpoint very specific things. I need to know this thing, this specific thing, not this general thing. So if I know I'm writing a story, for instance, the book that I'm currently writing, there is a case, there's strychnine poisoning. And so when I'm doing the research for that, and by the way, I really hope the FBI does not look at my internet history because yes, I know exactly how much strychnine it takes in liquid dose to kill somebody that's 6 foot tall and 205 pounds. But when I'm looking at that, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that exact detail, like how much of this exact thing do I need for my story? And I don't need the general thing. If I'm writing the story and I know somebody's going to be poisoned, I'm not just looking up ways to poison people. Also, not good for your internet search history, by the way. But that's too much of a rabbit hole, and I'll get lost in that. So I think narrowing it down to the very specific things I need to know are much better. Good question. Next one. How do you turn off the NITI loop? You don't. Or at least not get trapped in it. That we can work on. I am mentally exhausted all of the time. Welcome to the club. So turning off the NITI loop, I don't think you really turn it off. I think it's a matter of trying to find the things that you can do to break out of it. And that means trying to engage a different function, typically external feeling. And so listening to music that really moves you, playing music. If you play music, or doing any kind of art that you do, whether it's writing or playing music, a lot of people, it's gardening. I'm looking outside at, there's no garden out there. I'm just looking out there. I really wish there was, but I just kill everything. So I think doing those things where you can really feel something is very, very critical. Next one. As a writer, do you ever feel like your voice isn't worthy of going out into the world? Absolutely. And if so, how do you deal with overcome that? I write it anyway and hope that it resonates with the right people. I really don't think there's anything more to it than that. That is a good question. And we knock ourselves down like this all the time, but it's just part of life. And I think it's important that if the words are important to you, put them down on a page. And I think that's the most important thing you can do. Next one. I'm getting close to the end here. How do you come up with ideas for writing? All of my writing usually starts with a single thing, either an object or a person, or a circumstance. And so I'll take the circumstance of a zombie apocalypse, for instance, and I'll say, okay, I want to write something about a zombie apocalypse. How can I make that funny? Or how can I put a character in that is not going to handle it well? That will be really interesting to write around. Any of those kinds of things. I take that one thing and then I just spider out from it and build on it. And so if it's an object, the current book that I'm writing, that I'm perilously close to finishing, started in regards to a single thing. It was think about an old object. And from that, I've got 70,000 words down of what I think is a really cool story. So I think it's just listening to some of that inspiration, really. My friend Jess asks, how much plotting is too much plotting? I've concocted a method of planning that's working so far. After decades of not outlining and finishing stuff, I know there's still gaps, and I'm not sure when I should start writing. Gaps are okay. Write when there are still gaps. That's the way I do it, at least. And it seems to work, at least to a point of I'm about to finish something when I've never really ever finished anything before, ever. So this is a big one. The way I do it is I structure the story like scaffolding, but I don't know what the statue is going to look like yet. Do you know what I mean? So I'm building the scaffolding around, and that means I have a beginning and I have an end, and I know my characters, and I know the general situation that I want to put them in. And then from there, I'll map out even a little bit more. And I'll say, okay, like in these first few chapters, now I need to introduce people and, just kind of get a feel for the story. In the next few, now I start world building and getting some of that in. And even down to a chapter level, I know that in a particular chapter that I'm writing that this needs to happen, but I let myself have the leeway of not knowing exactly how it's going to happen. And I think that's part of the fun of being a writer. So partially pantsing it, right? Seat of your pants, and partially plotting it. For me, that seems to be the big winner. Next one. My friend Irene asks, a few questions. I'll try to keep them short. I will keep the answers short as well. If you could have one superpower, what would it be? Teleportation. Anybody who says anything else, that's wrong. Teleportation is the best one. If you could change one thing in the world, what would it be? Ugh. That's too big of a question to answer on a video. I think I would make sure people heard good stories more than just terrible stories. There's a lot of terrible out there, and I think people would feel better about humanity as a whole if we saw some of the good things that are happening, because there are lots of good things happening and there are lots of good people out there. That's how I would answer that. I kind of feel like I'm in a pageant of some kind. This is weird. How did you come up with the incredible story for your books? Irene has read a little bit of what I'm writing, and that came from a writing prompt. That's what I mentioned before. The writing prompt was, describe the oldest object you own. And my brain went nuts with that prompt and started thinking about what would the oldest object in the world be. And then I ended up in a supernatural sort of setting with it, and I just went crazy. And I'm 70,000+ words into a book and about to finish it. How do you think the future of humanity will look like? I think less like Star Trek and more like Idiocracy, if you've seen that movie. If you had to spend the rest of your life on a deserted island and only take one person with you, who would that be? What kind of person? How terrible am I for not wanting to take somebody that I'm related to? But I would totally take, what's the guy's name? Bear Grylls, right? The guy who does like all the survival stuff and can live like out in the woods by himself forever, because I'd be fine. That's who I would want on a deserted island, not somebody that doesn't know how to, start a fire. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? I'd make sure I could change lots of different things. But I am pretty happy with who I am, and flaws and all, I'll take it. It's a little too late to change like a lot of that stuff anyway. So next question. I'm like literally new here. Okay, cool. So I don't know you, but I saw a couple of your writing videos, and yeah, sounds like an INFJ. So I want to ask, when you write, do you prefer writing on a computer, or do you like personally write by hand? Are you a modern guy or classy? I mean, I have cool hats, so I'm kind of classy, but I'm definitely modern in terms of writing because I cannot read my own handwriting. So I am a computer writer or a tablet or something, but I need a keyboard. Also, I type like 100 words per minute and with a lot of accuracy, like 99% accuracy. So it's not a problem for my brain to get the words down that way. Next one. Congrats on the 10K. Thank you. You deserve it. Shucks. I have two questions. One, are there any books you would recommend that are helpful to an INFJ? Yes. Anything by Bo Miller. Start there. Bo, B-O, Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R. His stuff's on Amazon and everything else. He has a bunch of YouTube videos as well. Really good guy. Did a lot to get an INFJ, to get important INFJ content out there. And just a really good guy with good insight on everything. So I would recommend Bo Miller's books. Excuse me. What are your tips on finding balance between taking care of other people without overlooking your own needs? I'm so empathic. Mostly I put other people first and end up not feeling okay myself. Oh, that's something that we got to do. I mean, it's I think that's a natural tendency for INFJs. And I think it's important to understand that you need to breathe and, you need to be okay. If there's two people on a tightrope and one of them's hanging on by a hand and freaking out and the other one's up there, the one freaking out can't really help the one that's up top. Likewise, the one that is balanced and is safe can lend a helping hand to the person that's just hanging on. And so you need to be the person that's balanced and safe first, and then you can help others. Next one. What do you do or did to gather the courage to psych yourself up to do these videos? I started and stopped this channel dozens of times without publishing anything. I recorded videos that I never published for about a year before I actually uploaded one. And then my brother passed away. And I realized that everything around me can be gone in an instant. And that applies to me too. And so I didn't want to sit here and have insecurities and anxieties over something as silly as turning on a camera and talking to you. So I decided to just do it because we can just lose everything in an instant. And that's a tough feeling. And it's hard to square. But it let me fear a little bit less and not be afraid to get myself out there. Because you never know. You never know what could happen or who you could lose. And this is why I appreciate the people around me as much as I do. And this is why those connections that I talked about earlier are so very important to me. Because at any moment when a connection can be severed, it's very painful. And so I try to hold on to those. That's a great question. Thank you. Sue asks, as INFJ, we absorb the feelings around us. Do you think we can also do the reverse? Can we project emotions intentionally onto others? I don't think so. I don't think it's like it's not like, these aren't the droids you're looking for. It's not like some kind of Star Wars thing where you can impress that upon people. But I do think that, certainly if you lend an ear and you listen to somebody and you're a joyful person, some of that joy is going to rub off on somebody else. And remember too, that other people absorb emotions as well. So they're reading your mood. And if you're a happy person, they're going to absorb that and they're going to be happy. We just all need to be happy. I think that's what this comes down to. Next one. Hey, INFJ writer. See what you did there. Here's a writing related question. What genre is your current nearly finished book? It is nearly finished, 10,000 words away. And did any other authors influence your decision to write that type of book? That I handled earlier. Bonus question. What is your favorite book? Ooh, I'll get to that. Reading more in 2020. It's the goal. So, okay, first, genre my current book is in is considered speculative fiction, which is, it's a fiction story and it is supernatural. So it's the world that you're looking at right now. It is this world and this reality, but there are things in the undercurrent that there is a huge, expansive, complicated world just a step away. And that's the type of stuff that I'm writing, and writing it in a supernatural style, which is not something that I originally wanted to do. allows me some real cool creative freedoms with the story. My decision to write that type of book, it just happened. This is not a genre that I was interested in, but I guess it's one that I ended up being good at least to finish a story. And a bonus question, what is my favorite book? Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. That is my favorite book. It's a hard read. She's not everybody's cup of tea, but it was incredibly formative for me, just in terms of understanding that I have to really take stock and understand my personal responsibility, and the fact that I don't need to be blaming other people for my circumstances, and that I need to take charge of my own self and my dreams and my visions, and that I am the one responsible for making those happen, and I shouldn't be leaning on somebody else and hoping that they bequeath me with some kind of fortune to make my dreams come true, and that it's just on me. It's a great book. Like I said, not everybody's cup of tea, but I don't care. It's my favorite. Next one. If you could change a function of the INFJ for yourself, switch it out for its in-X opposite, or rearrange a hierarchy, what would it be? But if I did that, I wouldn't be an INFJ anymore. Yeah, I'm going to be thinking about that for a long time, aren't I? I would say, if anything, I would like to have a stronger sense of internal feeling, right? Introverted feeling. Because it is hard for me to understand how I feel about situations. And I end up having to look at others and things like that. Or somehow I end up always having to extrovert my feeling in some way or another. And that's a tough one, because you're not an INFJ anymore. I don't know. That's weird. I'll keep them the way they are. I like them like this. Last question. Bonjour, David. Bonjour. Here's my question for you. If one of your kids were to be INFJ, would that be good or bad news to you? A blessing or a curse? Congrats for reaching 10K. Cheers, Claire. Hello, Claire. Oh, wow. If one of my kids was an INFJ, congratulations, and I'm sorry. I have a suspicion that my middle has some INFJ on him. But I'm not really all that sure, to be honest. But he's definitely the most empathic of my three boys. And so it's something that I've got my eye on. I don't know. It would be a little bit of a both. It would be both a blessing and a curse, because in some ways, man, I know he's going to get his heart broken, right? If one of my kids it comes out and ends up being INFJ through testing and everything else. And they're not really old enough right now where I can accurately, where I think you can accurately type. I think you need to form into a young adult first. But I would say it would be helpful, knowing what I've been through and my experiences, to be able to impart some of that onto him, and some of the wisdom and experiences that I've had. Whether he listens or not would be an entirely different story. But I think it would be a little bit of both. So that's going to wrap it up. Those were the questions I could get through. I tried to do this in under 45 minutes, and I'm cutting it pretty darn close. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being a part of this channel and for being part of that 10,000 subs. I really am. I'm floored by it. When I started the channel, I really didn't think I was going to get it to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2019. I had 8,000 right around then. And just a couple months later, it hit 10. I have no grand dreams or visions of how many people are going to come into this orbit with us all. I use those words like orbit because of the alien thing. But I hope more do. And I hope that I keep saying things that resonate with you, and that you stay around and connect with all the other people. There's just so many awesome people on this channel, and I'm really fulfilled by it. And so let's keep all of these connections going. Thank you so much, and I will be seeing you again very, very soon.